This is the DLS Dallas Stars Emergency Podcast. Our Stanley Cup Playoff coverage is brought to you by Bud Light. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy responsibly. And by Happiest Hour, your home base and the best place to catch the Stanley Cup Final. Just steps away from the AAC, the ultimate spot with 50-plus beers and 40-plus TVs for all the big moments every single game day. Happiest Hour, your favorite spot for the Stanley Cup Final. And we welcome you into today's emergency podcast alongside Craig Ludwig, Sam Nessler. We are in different locations. We are in different time zones today, but we do have a show coming up at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Why are we here? Well, because you probably just saw the news or clicked on the link and saw it. Stars head coach Pete DeBoer has been relieved of his coaching duties. He's been fired. We don't know yet about the rest of the coaching staff. Jim Nill will meet with the media this afternoon at noon in Frisco. I'll go over there and find out. Sam will be ruining his own travel plans. And this
immediately
surprising. Well, what we needed to do is we needed to move Sam out of the state, and then something would happen. That's all this is. So let's go right to Luds as Sam takes a drink. Luds, we talked about this being a possibility, but it sure felt like he got over the hump of will they, won't they, especially, and again, these were just rumor mills, but we heard that Boston might have been waiting to see what happened with Pete DeBoer. They announced they hired Marco Sturm yesterday, and I don't know about you, but to me, that kind of felt like, all right, well, Pete's got 1 year left. Maybe Jim Nill's going to stick with it. Were you shocked about this morning?
No, I'm going to need shock treatment maybe in about 10 minutes from now. But I would like to revisit your little things you played yesterday from two of the captains on the team, and then just replay the comment that I had for you. I'm telling you, it was too glowing.
You thought it was overly complimentary?
Yes. That's why you do what you do, Owen. I could never put it into those kind of words. But, yeah, it just shows you, let's go back to Bruce Cassidy in Boston, right? It just shows you, to me, there was a lot more, it seems from the past years with the exit meetings, there was a lot more reported about it. There are the exit meetings. We're going to talk to the players and all this kind of stuff that we seem to hear leading up to it in the past, which means that, you know, your general manager and assistant general manager and all those kind of people want to know if it's just smoke or if there's some fire behind it, or if it's just out there in the atmosphere and it's coming from the fans and not the players. And so this decision wasn't made solely by the general manager. This decision was made probably by an owner, by the GM, and most importantly, by a few players, because those are the players that have to perform during the year. And if there's some kind of things going into it. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say something about Jakeoettinger. And Sam, you guys know him on way better than I do. I do not believe that he would be one of the guys that would go in there and have derogatory comments towards. I just don't think it's in his nature. I think that it's a responsibility of the so-called leaders on the team, and they voiced their opinions. I don't think there was anybody there that said, we can't play for this guy. I just think you take everything in that was said, how it was said, the tone that was said, and match it up to a few other of the middle of the road guys. I don't mean the Maverick Borks and, Dumbas and guys that didn't get a lot of ice time. We know what those guys are going to think or say, whether they say it out loud. So I think there was a lot of thought that went into this, especially, in my opinion, especially with everything that's going on about available coaches. So right now, it seems to be pretty limited from the standpoint of the team that's knocking on the door to win a Stanley Cup, and you've got a majority of the, so-called tenured coaches out there available yet.
But there are a lot of options. But Luds, I loved your comp of the Bruce Cassidy, because I think people were shocked that the Bruins got rid of him. And we talked about the players in that room and who was happy or not. Our producer, John, was very plugged into that as a big-time Bruins fan. And then he goes to Vegas and they win the Stanley Cup. And look, Pete DeBoer is an excellent head coach. Sam, you know that his record shows that. I mean, whether it's the regular season record with Dallas, whether it's the game sevens, getting to the third round is a very big accomplishment. Doing it 3 years in a row shows that this is a quality team, but that's maybe not enough, is it?
Yeah, and that's the perfect way to put it. Like, I think I was just telling John before we jumped on here, Pete literally led the Stars to be the best team in the regular season over his 3 years. He had a .665 points percentage, best record, all these things, and they went to the Western Conference Final within 2 to 3 wins 3 times in a row, all 3 years. That, I think Sagan talked about how crazy it was that it happened so quickly. There's all that, and you can give that and say, wow, that's crazy how unstable NHL coaching jobs are, and that's very true. However, the key point here is what you just said. This team is not worried about that anymore. This team is no longer the team from 2018, 2019 that's just trying to get into the playoffs and try to win a couple rounds. They know that this is their window. They know they have the core. They have the superstar now. They have the team to win a Stanley Cup. And I think Jim Nill has just said right now today, we're no longer willing to let that pass by. Because a lot of people were saying, Pete's got one more year, give him one more shot. And that was fine. But one more year, if they went, let's say they finished the year, lost in the second round, or even made it to the Western Conference Final and lost again, we just wasted another year of our core, of our best team, of our whatever we have. And Dallas is just not willing to risk that right now. And I think Nill's making a statement here and today. We are ready to win the Stanley Cup right now. And we're going to find a coach that we think can do that in 2025-26.
Luds, you said people are going to bring up Jake Oettinger. I think that's fair to bring up because of the very public nature of what happened in Game 5 against the Oilers. But I want you to talk about that again, but I also want you to tell us why you think it's not just about the Jake Oettinger move.
Well, what I mean about the Jake Oettinger, I just don't think Jake would go in and talk to Jim. I understand everything that was talked about. And listen, we've seen some of the comments that are out there, or read some of the things that are out there. You know how they chop them things up a little bit to get, make it sound worse than what it is. But,
right.
I think it was maybe that was the point, the boiling over point. I just wonder if it had anything to do with coming down the stretch this year, the way that the team played. Were there adjustments made in the game to be able to play in playoff hockey, which, I've had some conversations with people about. There are different scenarios there that you can do different things in the playoffs. But when it comes to Jake, everything's been talked about. He starts his new contract last year. The last thing that anybody, and I'm talking about management, coaches, want to go into the season next year is having your goaltender not being 100% focused on doing his job and having, again, a distraction, whether it's a tiny one, whether it was nothing. But how's the offseason going to start when they all get back here? If Pete DeBoer is here, what's the first question that's going to be asked to Jake Oettinger, right? I mean, it's going to start right there. And it's probably, if the season doesn't start off the way you want it to, what's everybody going to think? What's everybody going to say? So I think that what they're doing is they're saying, okay, maybe it wasn't as bad as what it is, but in today's day, the players are way more important than anybody else in this organization, right? And so we're going to start with a clean slate, and we're going to have a fresh atmosphere. We're going to have a fresh attitude. Hopefully they come in and they tweak a couple things in the way that their team plays. I do think that, and again, I know that there's a former New York Ranger coach out there. I know there's a former Philly coach out there, so I'm sure that they're looking and talking about who would be the best fit to come in with what you guys just talked about. This is the window. We've talked about this for 2 years now. This is the window. And, and I think from Jim's standpoint, after making the move for Rantanen and bringing in that big piece that is a proven playoff performer, although maybe it didn't happen in the last round as much, but listen, I think they believe that everything is in line, but I do believe that they can add a couple pieces. Just go ahead and tune into the NHL playoffs that's going on tonight. Watch the way these two teams play. You need a little bit of that. So I think that maybe they can add a couple of those pieces and make sure you're getting the right guy, because there's a couple of guys out there that may, they can be hard on players. But again, maybe this team can take that kind of coaching. Maybe that's exactly what this team needs.
Sam, we can do a whole list, and we'll save some of it for our show this afternoon. But there are a lot of coaches out there, as Lud said. He talked about the guy from Philly, John Tortorella. He talked about the departed Rangers head coach, Peter Laviolette, who won a Stanley Cup with Carolina and has been around the block. There's also
that guy plays man on man.
Oh boy.
There's also Jim Nill has a history of connections with Detroit Red Wings. The one that comes to mind immediately is Gerard Gallant. He's out there and hasn't been coaching for a couple of years.
There you go.
There's tons of retreads But Luds, actually, I'll ask. This is for Sam. I can't just keep throwing it to Lud. What about David Carl? We talked about him being comfortable in his situation in Denver, joining the Dallas Stars roster. And I'm not saying it has to be David Carl, but that's a totally different scenario than what he would be looking at if he was being interviewed by the Chicago Blackhawks currently, which we heard he was, but stayed in Denver. I know he signed an extension, but that, those contracts can be broken. What about Todd Nelson, former assistant coach who's gone to Hershey and won the Calder Cup and been really successful at every spot he's been as a head coach? What about Carl Taylor, the former Texas Stars assistant who's been phenomenal up in Milwaukee? There are names all over the place, and there's probably some that we didn't even think about.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big question. We'll hash this out. I don't know how quickly this is going to go. I'm sure they're going to take their time with it. But as you said, that the key there is that this is a very attractive job versus the Chicago. Nothing against the Chicago Blackhawks, but the situation they're in is a far different one. This is a chance for a coach to come in, whether it's a retread or a young guy, and have a chance to win a cup right away. And that's going to be the back and forth that we talk about, and that the Stars have to look at is, do we want the Gallants and the Laviolettes and the retreads, coaches that have proven it, but have also been around a lot longer and maybe aren't as fresh of a voice, which is a key thing. I mean, that was in Jim Nill's quote. He basically said, we're looking for a new voice here. I don't see a lot of the retreads being necessarily a totally new voice. I'm a fan of going. The Jim Montgomery one is a huge example for me. That changed the way they energized the team. It changed the way they played the game. I don't know that that's going to happen with a veteran coach that's been around a while. I could be totally wrong, but I start thinking of what you were just talking about, the Todd Nelson, maybe the Elaine Nazardine, even the Neil Graham. I don't think maybe he's ready for that spot yet, but those type of guys that have proven it maybe elsewhere, either as an assistant or a head coach in college or in the AHL. And that to me is where I lean. I really think a new, younger voice is what this team needs. However, Luds gets excited because a guy like Gallant can be hard on you and make you play that way that we've wanted to see. So that's going to be the conversation back and forth. Just personally, I would love to see a Jim Montgomery type hire here.
Hey, I will say a couple of things on that. I saw a couple of things go across here.
Sure.
And one was Pavelski. Joe ain't getting off. I mean, Joe still hasn't caught that big muskie, that big keeper. So, and the other one I do agree with is Jay Woodcroft. I think that Woodcroft in his time in Edmonton with some superstars there, the way that he handled that, the way that team kind of went on a trajectory moving up as he was there, I think he would be a good one. And but anyway, I'm sure that my opinion obviously means nothing.
Why did you get excited about Gerard Gallant when I brought him up?
Well, for exactly what you guys are talking about. I think Gerard is a player's coach, but he's not afraid to be hard on a player. And I think when you get to know Gerard, to me, when I played against him or when we played against him, you knew you were in a battle every single night. And I think it's the way that he coaches. I think it's his demeanor, the way that he comes across. It's the scowl on his face. And when he's coaching the game, it's like he's playing the game. And I think that stuff bleeds over to his players. And I think from what I understand as a coach, he knows how to handle his players. And I think in today's day, you have to. Now there could be the argument that he's a throwback back to the old days. But
right.
But when these guys, and I agree with having younger guys in there. And as far as Carl goes, I think he was a new shiny penny out there, right? But I think the one statement that he made, he can't go back on now. He went back, he said, because there were recruits that were coming to school that would not come to that school. And I think he felt an obligation. So I think that's something you can't throw out there and then pull it back again. You know what I'm saying? So, but I really like the idea of Gallant because he will know how to handle the young guys, especially, and I've said it, and this is my whole thing about college coaches. This is a new generation. You have to know how to handle the way that these guys play, the way they think, the way that you can treat them, how you can't treat them. And I think when you coach younger players, I'm talking junior players and things like that, you get a good handle and you learn how to do it. I mean, would Dale Hunter be a guy? You know, I mean, he's old school. He's hardcore. I don't think he wants to come back to the NHL, but I guess I just use that as an example. When I watch, we got to watch a little bit of the Memorial Cup here in the last few days. You look at how the players react to that coach. They love that guy. And we know how hard he is on those guys. So it's got to be one of those guys that has that healthy balance in between pushing a button, know what button to push, when to step back, and then when to have that conversation. Like maybe not the conversation that happened here between head coach and goaltender and wait 2 or 3 days. Maybe you have it that night. Maybe you call, you walk in there after the game and you get them solely alone and say, hey, Jake, I get it right now. Can we talk tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock or noon? But let's get it out of the way and let's not fester, or let's not hope it just goes away.
All right, we are going to continue this conversation in just a minute, but first we have to tell you about being a DLLS diehard. There are so many reasons why you should do that, but first and foremost, let's take a look at this mock draft. Charlie O'Connor in the PHLY network, that's our affiliate in Philadelphia, just put up a really great diehard mock draft where he went through every pick of the first round. Yes, we know the Stars do not have a pick in round 1, but you should check it out. It's on our website, alldls.com. And speaking of which, since you're on our website, if you sign up to be a diehard, there is a trip coming up for the DLLS Cowboys show going to Las Vegas. Speaking of guys in Vegas, and when we were looking at that, they are going to see Monday Night Football in November against the Raiders. So that'll be a really fun one. You can sign up for that. DLS diehards get 20% off events. The QR code at the bottom of the screen is the way to get there. You'll get access to all the writing, of course, the T-shirts, even this one here. The DLS diehards, you get a free T-shirt of your choice with your first year of your annual subscription. The Otter shirts look great. They've been shipping recently. The Finnish Mafia one, whether it's the Wyatt Johnston 16-bit or the Mikko finisher, maybe even the Moose or the Captain. All of those are just some of the Stars style shirts that we have at DLS. All of those are, oh, look at that. Sam's got the Captain one on right now. Very nice, Sam. So sign up to be a diehard today, DLS, alldls.com. And if you haven't already, make sure you sign up for our free DLLS daily newsletter. It's at the bottom of the website on alldls.com. You go down and you type in your email address and you will get the newsletter in your inbox for free every day. You do not have to be a diehard for that, but you should be a diehard anyway. Okay. I want to ask Luds first because he has a relationship with him. Somebody in the chat mentioned Steve Ott, who's been a longtime assistant now with the St. Louis Blues. Would it be ridiculous to have 2 Otters on the same team?
No, not for me. I mean, he's paid his dues, and everything that I've heard and talked about people, and one of them being Ken Hitchcock, and Hitch was there. And I know that Hitch felt that he would be a head coach someday. And he is probably that blend, that nice blend in the middle of being able to play, into this kind of generation, so to speak, his days, and then especially the long time that he's been on the bench, especially with some good coaches in St. Louis. And so I think that he's had a diet of 3 different coaches there, maybe 4.
Yes.
So he's been there with those. And the one thing that's always constant is he's there. So it tells me who I believe is one of the best general managers in the NHL and has been for a long time, and Doug Armstrong, who's going to be actually stepping back or up or whatever you want to call it. But he wouldn't have Otter around there, and he wouldn't make sure, because when a head coach comes in, regardless how they get there, they have the choice of what they're going to do. And so whether it's them making the choice to keep Otter there or Army saying, we'd like you to be our head coach, but here's a guy that's going to be here because of the way that I've watched him go about his business. So to me, in today's day, that's so important to have that relationship, as I said before.
And they've been consistently hard to play against, Luds. Like, you don't see a team normally go.
Well, that may have more to do, Sam, with the guy upstairs that knows the kind of lineup put out there.
That's another way of saying the exact same thing is if he's keeping him around and allowing him to stay on that bench, no matter who the coaches are, he obviously believes that he has the voice to get that job done on the ice. And I think that the good example there you just said is, I think you need to trust your coach, fully trust your coach, but you need to be a little bit scared of him. Like the best coaches I had were not guys that were buddy. I do whatever I want in front of them. It's the guys that I was a little bit nervous about. If I make a mistake, I'm a little nervous to come back to the bench because he might ream me. I think this team needs that. And I think that's the balance that Dallas needs, is get a little bit of toughness, where if you're going to go out there and you're going to have a lazy shift, you're going to get called out for it.
Yeah. Well, and any player that will go out and learn 5 different languages so he can actually speak and get under the skin of the players so they can understand what he's saying. You know that the guy is committed to being a great teammate.
I hope one of those is Finnish.
Yeah, exactly.
The conversation about who will continue until they announce who their head coach is. The time frame is interesting because they have a bunch of free agent decisions to make. And we talked about this on yesterday's show. Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene, Mikael Granlund, Cody Ceci, all UFAs, Colin Blackwell. I think that's a no-brainer. You bring him back because I think both the cost and what he provides will be very inexpensive, and he really fills a great role here. But then you have, an RFA you've got to deal with. You've got to get him re-signed. You've got that I'm talking about Nils Lundqvist. You've got some things to do, and this is a window where they expect to win. And the amazing thing is, guys, on the plus, we said, well, Pete got him to the Western Conference Final 3 years in a row. Remember, we played the Tyler Seguin clip yesterday where Luds was absolutely right. It was very, very complimentary, maybe overly so. But he also said we may have been ahead of schedule, meaning going to the conference final their first year under DeBoer might have been a bit of a surprise to some. My question is, when you get to the conference final 3 years in a row and you don't get past there for 3 years with some roster alterations each year, does that go from, wow, we're knocking on the door to maybe we need somebody else to get over the hump?
Well, when you say that part, remember I said this numerous times when Brett Hull was brought into here, the question was asked from the owner to the general manager, what do we need to get past a certain team?
Right.
Well, it ended up to be a player. Well, I think right now where management is, they believe the players are here. Now it's which coach can get these guys past and over the hump. And so I look at this whole situation. The one thing that I can't, it doesn't register to me that Jim Nill, knowing how due diligent he is with the way he goes about his business, and he could have won the third in a row. He could have.
We don't know yet.
I think they're going to give it to the dude in Florida. But anyway, regardless.
Bill Zito, yeah, I think you may be right.
Jim Nill is very similar to Bob Gainey. Again, I keep bringing Gainey up, but the year he wanted me to go coach in Kalamazoo, he had said, I have a plan A, but I need a plan B before I pull the trigger on plan A. I think that's Jim Nill. So I think with all this done, he has had conversations. He has talked to people already. He doesn't pull the trigger without knowing which way I'm leaning. So is it down to one, or is it down to maybe 1, 2, or 3, or whatever it may be? And then maybe there's a couple follow-up meetings with whoever that may be. I don't think this is going to go on very long. I think, and I don't think it should, because again, you got 23 guys that are sitting here. Now they're wondering who's going to be our coach. Do I know the coach? Man, I knew played for the guy, and the dude sat me out all the time. All that kind of stuff. For a player, you want them leaving here with kind of having a fresh start. And speaking of fresh starts, here is an opportunity. They say you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Well, you do when there's a new coach, because there's guys. Let's talk about the guys that you mentioned, right? Yep, if those guys come back, now they can try to impress whoever that next coach will be. And then on the other side of that, the guys that maybe were getting some extra ice time, they have to impress that new guy to make sure they continue to get that kind of ice time. So that's where you get the dead cat bounce, the jump from a new coach. But that's generally just before the playoffs start versus starting fresh.
I have a question for you, Luds. I think it's interesting to me. I'm sure it'll be interesting to other people. So players, we're joking about how I'm not there. Players are on vacation for the most part. I know a lot of guys went out of town right after exit interviews. You're a player. I'm sure you were on vacation the second after you finished the season as well. So you go down, you're in Mexico, you're on the beach. You hear your head coach got fired. What's going through your head?
Well, I was out a split second after the season was over. Chelios and I would usually just run into the jersey room to see if we could snag a couple big time name jerseys and then take them and then head out. And the beach that I was on was in Eagle River, Wisconsin. It wasn't in Mexico, so that was where it was. I think when you hear that everything that I just said, I've never had an in-season coach get fired. It's always been in the off season. And as a matter of fact, I won a Stanley Cup, and this just tells you about the makeup of a team. The first Stanley Cup we won. It may have been the most unintelligent coach we've ever had. But what we had in our room is we had Bob Gainey's and Larry Robinson's and Guy Lafleur. You know, we had all the guys. Well, Flower wasn't there, but we had all the guys that were leaders there. So much of this to me always falls back on your leadership group. And again, even when Hitch was here, there were many times that I was in that room, in that office. And, you know, sometimes and again, it comes from the players. The players need this. They want this. They want a little more of this, a little less of that. I would have to go in there and negotiate at times. But he knew how to handle me. I knew how to handle him. And so did a few other guys, not just me. But you have to have a good relationship with that guy and vice versa. They have to be willing. You can't bring in a guy, never had torts for a coach. No idea. Love what he does. He's hard on players. When his interviews he comes out and tells you like it is. But then I think there's another guy behind that. I think there's another coach guy that's behind that. But you have to have a coach, as I said numerous times, that can have good relationships with your players. And with that being said, you need, as important, if not more important, you need a good assistant coach. And when Rick Wilson and Doug Jarvis were our assistants here for Hitch, they were the buffers in between the players and the head guy. And we needed that. And so you bring in that guy, a lot of times it would be, Wills, go talk to that guy. Go talk to him. And because I know if you're going to, and I'm the head guy, I know he's not going to want to listen to me. But those guys to me, and I know that didn't Spotter wasn't he one of Pete's guys? I mean, that's who he kind of leaned on.
Oh yeah, big time.
So,
well, we'll talk about the coaches and especially the staff besides just Pete DeBoer during our show today, which, by the way, live at 2:00 from the studio. After Jim Nill will be talking at noon, I believe, roughly. I don't know if it'll be noon sharp or a few minutes afterwards up in Frisco, but I'll be there. And then Sam and Luds will be joining me for the show at 2:00. We do have a super chat real quick, and this is an interesting point because let's try to wrap this, guys. We could talk about this for hours, but we got to save something for the show. Burned Oils with a Brendan Smith. There's a guy that maybe has a different outlook on coaches. And the year after the Cup, see Owen so much for Jim Nill doesn't fire coaches. And that is a good point, guys, because this is out of character for the Stars general manager. It was also out of character for him to use first-round draft picks to get players. I mean, he's done it before, but it was more of a first-rounder for a first-round draft guy.
Yeah, not nearly as many.
He had the conditional first round on a couple of things with the Matt Zuccarello deal, but that to give away one for Granlund and Ceci, and then to give two away as part of the package for Rantanen. That is different. And of course, what's Jim Nill doing? Jim Nill has his name on the Stanley Cup. He is as an assistant GM with the Detroit Red Wings a couple of times, but I'm sure the drive is win one as the general manager.
Hey, just for Jim never, to my knowledge, I don't know if Jim's ever fired a coach during a season.
During his contract, other than Jim Montgomery, and that was not for hockey-related things.
Yeah, that one had different things going on.
Correct.
But I think Jim just has that kind of relationship when he gets to know people. And the other thing we should say, listen, Pete DeBoer is not a bad coach. He's not. So if this whole thing didn't happen, wouldn't Pete be back? Well, we don't know that. Maybe he didn't get him over the hump. He wouldn't. But I think it just leaves
a great question,
the way that it went down. And I said this before. Pete DeBoer and Sam and Owen, you guys bring it up. Pete's a lawyer talk. He says things like, I've never seen Pete after games lose his composure. And I felt as the final, this third round was going on after game one or game two, probably starting in game two, it got a little testier. And I think he felt the push. He felt the button. He needed to get over the top. And then what all happened on the bench, and the way that it was all on camera, you're on national TV. It's the first time I've ever seen him flustered like that. So I think, all of that was a buildup for DeBoer. But again, he's going to go someplace else. He's going to probably do the same thing and get a team to go. And if it is someplace else, hopefully he wins the Stanley Cup. That's after the Dallas Stars get their cup.
We have one more super chat we have to do before we sign off. Andrew Epps with a Masterton and a 99 cup here. Yuka Yalonen for head coach.
Knew that was coming up.
All right, guys. 2:00 Central Time. We will be live from our studios, or Sam from wherever he is in the world. Luds, Sam, myself, and John, the DLS Stars podcast, will be live this afternoon. Thanks for watching our emergency pod right here on DLS.